Welcome everyone to another creative writing workshop. This month, the month of June 2026, we're going to be starting our 4-week series on the Plot Lab. Today we're going to look at story engine, structure, conflict, and momentum. I'm really excited about this. My name is Laurel. I'm the Director of Educators in VR and founder of the Creative Writing Workshop. And we're going to have fun today. So we meet every Tuesday here in Engage XR. We love them, to talk about all aspects of creative writing to really help you improve your writing skills. We're a supportive and creative environment, educational environment that we create here. Have a good deal of fun for writers in virtual reality and beyond virtual reality. Don't need a VR headset to be here. You can come in 2D or on your phone or whatnot, and we're here to explore creative writing skills. Now, over the last session, I talked about a series of books that I want to promote again. I get nothing for doing this. I found them incredibly helpful in my writing, and people were asking about them. These are books by Angela Ackerman and Becca Puglisi, and they started out with the Emotion Thesaurus. This is a book that lists a variety of different emotions and all the synonyms, antonyms, and descriptions, words, and how to use them and things based on different emotions. Really fantastic. And they expanded into the Emotion Amplifier Thesaurus. Then there's Emotional Word Thesaurus and Conflict Thesaurus. There's many different volumes of these things, and they've expanded into Occupation Thesaurus, Urban Setting, Rural Setting, and a whole bunch of other things. These are incredible tools for writers, absolutely brilliant, and I use them all the time to help me find the right words and not be redundant. So it's a thesaurus, but it's more than that. It helps me brainstorm how my characters might be feeling, how they would react, how they might not react, etc. Really invaluable, especially in the series that we've been doing recently. I also want to put together one of my friends, Larry Brooks. His technical books that dissect the physics and the engineering and the elements of writing they're textbooks, but they're absolutely genius looks if you can handle all of his sports analogies. He's so funny. Anyway, if you're really looking to expand your resources, I really recommend Larry Brooks' books, Story Engineering, Story Physics, Story Fix, and Great Stories Don't Write Themselves. Really, he has a couple other ones, but these, and a lot of his own nonfiction that he's published, but these are really good looks at what we're going to be talking about today and have been talking about all year long. So coming up, events that are coming up, June 30th, we're going to have a reading event. Get your 4 minutes or less, I hope. We stretch a little bit, but we want to make sure there's time for everyone. So please put a limit to read out loud your short stories, your excerpts, your poetry, if you have a song, whatever it is. It needs to be original. Come and share it with us. In August, we're still debating if Tang Whistle's going to step in and continue our Odyssey and Ink program, or we're going to take a break, or I'm actually talking to a couple of other professional writers that they may step in and cover for me in August, because my office is an oven. So we're going to let somebody else's voices in your ear. In September, we're probably going to prep for VR Rimo. I say every year, I'm not going to do it again, and every year I end up doing it. VR Rimo is our NaNoWriMo, National Novel Writing Month. Has the nonprofit closed a year and a half ago, 2 years, and we replaced it with our own virtual reality writing month in November. So we prep in September, and then in October, November, we write all month, have meetings every single day. So get ready for that. We also have our storytelling, scary storytelling coming in October, and a holiday storytelling in December. Okay. As I have mentioned, this month we're doing something this year, something special, doing month-long series. We've done 4 already, now, or three and a smidge, and this month we're focused on Plot Lab, designing stakes and tension, structure, and story engine, really diving right in to how do you make your plot tight and take the reader on a really good journey and an adventure. Next month we're doing short story boot camp, so get ready for that. So our Plot Lab is divided in 4 sessions. Today we're going to look at the story engine, structure, conflict, and momentum. Next week we're going to turn up the heat, and again, as we did last month with our Believable People series, we're going to really look at how do you create the conflict to keep readers turning the page, and then continue to tighten those screws. So get ready. All right, any questions? Ready to go? Yes. Okay. That's nodding. All right. So let's go with the plot lab. So this is the introduction to elements. Some of them you know, but we're going to really look at the plot as an engine, the story engine. And what a plot is a chain of causes and consequences. It's not just a list of events. When something happens, there are consequences. Good, bad, indifferent, whatever. There's something that happens. It's the, it's the law. For every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. This is a basic storyline premise. Now, a plot is made up of different types, and each type has acts. It has plot points, it has scenes, and it has beats. It's a modern term that we do, and every major beat in a story, it's like a heartbeat in a story, should increase the pressure on the character. So let's look at some of the terminology. If you have a question, please interrupt me. Basic ingredients in a plot. We have the plot, which is a progressive sequence of events, and each one influences the next, and the next, and the next, and the next. There's a chronology to this. Now, there are flashbacks, but flashbacks are part of the chronology as people. It drives the story forward. We were talking all last month about Project Hail Mary. Flashbacks are a driving element of the story, and we, the audience, the reader, the audience, we were learning about the past in a chronological sequence with the character. So that as the character had amnesia, was having pieces of memory, there was a chronology to it. So back flashes and forward flashes are a part of writing plot devices. But just know that there's still there's a pace. There is a progressive sequence of events that builds one upon the other that influences the next one over and over, and those flashbacks can be a part of it. So it's not just necessarily about a linear chronology. We have different plot types, and we have a plot structure. That's the framework that the narrative sits in, and in the plot devices, which is these narrative techniques that take the story and they move it through conflict and tensions and revelations and all these different things. So we're going to be looking at all these elements because they are part of the gears that drive our story forward. So we're going to start with some basic framework stuff. We're going to look at the acts that build upon in writing that are all the parts. Okay, I think of a plot as a structure. I think of it as a house plan or a blueprint, whatever it is, and then you pour your customized story into that template mold. I want to address something that I hear quite often, and that is in NaNoWriMo, they developed these terms called pantsers, were people who wrote by the seat of their pants, meant they just wrote organically, and then plotsters, or people who write to plot. They follow the plot. None of what I'm talking about will change whatever type of writer you are, and you may be in between. I'm in between. I'm what's called a plotster or plantster. I like to have a plot so I can, write it all out. I have an outline. I have some kind of structure so I know what I'm going to do. But if I go off rails, I'm okay with that too because it's an organic part of writing. I think most writers are semi-organic in that response, but none of these, just because you have a framework, because you have a structure that you're working from, does not mean you can't write seat of your pants or otherwise. So I just wanted to put that out there. So think of each of these as a gear in the template mold that you get to put whatever your story is in there to have it follow whatever framework you choose. So these little flowery things look like gears. So you have the framework, and then which is the core structure, and and then you have the acts. There's a type in there too. Then you have sequences, scenes, and beats. So let's start diving into our engine to look at the parts that make our story work. And it begins with plot types. Now, in a very amazing, grandiose effort in a gigantic book, which I can hurt somebody with it, Christopher Booker wrote the 7 basic plots, divided them into these basic structures. And I'm only going to talk about a few of them because we've covered these extensively before, but understand what kind of plot, what kind of type is your plot helps you, because then there are some guidelines, okay, rules, there's some things you need to pay attention to. So hero's journey is probably one of the most famous, most common, most recognizable, and they're very important because they are the hero's journey is has a very specific structure to it, and these are movies. When you take these stories, you turn to movies. Some of the best movies are the hero's journey, and you know them. There's Star Wars, Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings, Hunger Games. These are hero's journey where the hero, we're fighting. We believe in the hero. We're behind the hero as they move through the story and all the adventures that they undergo. The core three-part structure. There's a lot of details to this, but the core distinction from the hero's journey from other stories is that there's always a departure. You have the ordinary world, and then you have the call to adventure, right? Now, along with the call to the adventure, you have the, not doing this, not happening, this, I don't think so, and then a mentor, a god, a fairy, a godmother, whatever that happens to be, somebody shows up and says, you know, like in Star Wars, we have, you know, we had the great mentor was Yoda, and his name. Who was the great mentor that dies in Star Wars? Anybody remember?
Is that Obi-Wan Kenobi?
Obi-Wan Kenobi. That's the meeting with the mentor. It says you have been called, and we are giving you this journey that you are to make, you know, to be the hero. Okay, and then you have that departure as you cross the first threshold, and you have to leave. And that was when Luke returned, found his home, family home burned down, and his aunt and uncle dead, and he had to revenge them. Then you have the initiation, which is all the tests that the character goes through, the allies and the enemies, and the approach to the innermost cave. It's a cliche, but that's part of the terminology. And then the ordeal. There has to be suffering involved, or the hero is not a good hero. You understand that. There's got to be blood must be shed, pain must be felt, and then they get the reward. And once they get the reward, then there's the return. Now, I want you to pay attention to reward and the return, because this is different from the next one, which is the quest plot. And boy, we love our quests. That's what most games are quests. We have Lord of the Rings, of course, Wizard of Oz is a great quest plot, and Finding Nemo. You know, each one of these are different. Indiana Jones, Lord of the Rings. I mean, Raiders of the Lost Ark with Indiana Jones, The Hobbit. All these are quest plots. And what differentiates them is that instead of having this, you're set off on the great mission, you have a call to adventure. It's a little different. And you start with the ordinary world, and then you have the call. And there's the refusal to call, and then you're forced into the call by whatever reason it's forcing you. You have to go save you do whatever. It's not just a hero. It's not saving the princess. Actually getting the Holy Grail, getting finding the treasure. Then you have the journey and the tests, where you get allies and enemies, you're identified, and you approach the great castle. And then you have the ordeal. Again, blood must be shed and pain must be felt. When you have a good quest, you got to have suffering involved with quests and heroes. There got to be pain. Now, in the section on return, in the act where they return with the treasure, but you notice that the reward and the treasure are not found during the journey and the tests. It's on the downhill slide. When they come back, the return journey, they win the treasure, and they return back, and that's when they get the reward. So there's a shift in there between the two of those. And those are basic structures we do now. Differentiate that with comedy plots. What's it that makes comedy plots different? We have 3 examples: Midnight Summer's Dream, Shakespeare, Bridget Jones' Diary, and Legally Blonde are great, famous, well-known comedy plots. So what makes them different? Because a comedy plot is not a hero's journey, it's not a quest, it's not a tragedy, a little. It is a plot structure that is built around confusion, misunderstanding, and social entanglement. And it gets more tangled and more confusing before it is finally clarified in the end. It's not just a funny story. It's a pattern where everything goes against the main character, until it comes to a resolution of a happy and successful conclusion. Anyone know what the most common genre is for comedy plots in books and movies? Anyone? Steph, do you know? Nope. Ian? Romantic.
Well,
Oh, go ahead, Ian.
funnier as you go through.
Yeah, but it's romantic comedies. This is where the comedy plot structure thrives. It starts with that confusion and the entanglement and, misunderstandings. Some of the best Sandra Bullock romance movies are all based on misunderstandings. It has to start with a misunderstanding, miscommunication. And then there's hidden motives. There's all kinds of mixed up relationships. So it's like this is a classic for every Sandra Bullock movie, I think. And then there's social disorder that happens with it. And then it moves into the next part where you start, things don't get easier. Things get even more complicated. Things get worse before they get better. And there's mistaken identity that happens. There's so many obstacles that get in the way. And then there tends to be other characters that step into the middle of this and just add more confusion and anarchy. This is the really, really true definition of a good comedy structure. And then as it gets to the ending, you have some kind of a revealing event and the shift in understanding. So now miscommunication becomes understanding. The social order is restored or something changes in a good, positive way. And then there's a party. This is basic.
How about the movie Miss Congeniality? Can we do that here?
Absolutely. That is exactly the same thing, where you have an FBI agent. It has to disguise herself as one of the contestants for Miss America or whatever it happened to be, I don't remember the competition, and but Miss whoever they are, and she doesn't know how to do any of those things, and yet she has to act like a beauty queen. She doesn't have a clue. And she twirls baton or something. I can't even remember what she does for her act. Stumbles over thing, but she's got likability, and she has to make it through to find out who's the target is and who's going to be assassinated, and all the confusion that happens with that. And that's a perfect example. Ian, excellent example. All right, so these are plot types. Now let's talk about the structure. Because once you identify what kind of genre plot type you have, part of that in understanding how the wheels churn the gears churn in your engine, you need to really then dive in to what kind of structure you're going to do. And it's made up of these elements. You've got the acts, the sequence, and the scenes and the beats. Most common is the 3-act structure. We learn about this in high school, middle school. Basic play, been analyzed by the Greeks and Romans. The 3-act structure is pretty standard. You have Act 1, Act 2, and Act 3. And as it goes through towards Act 3, it builds and builds. The plot thickens, characters are tested, the action continues to rise until there's the climax at Act 2, and then it returns back to normal and things fluctuate. So most people are familiar with this. We've talked about these before, so this is a refresher. Freytag's pyramid took the 3-act and in 1863, Gustav Freytag, yep, I remembered his name. He was a German novelist, playwright, and literary critic, and he said 3 is not enough. That's not reality. He created Freytag's pyramid, which is 5 acts with a climax at the midpoint, and then it falls off through. So he puts the climax as close to the middle, where in the 3-act it's close to the end. See how it's close to the end? He said a climax in the middle, and then you need to have things happen on the way out the door. So he added 5. He analyzed Romeo and Juliet as an example of this. Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone follows this, where you have Harry's miserable life. Act 1 is Harry's miserable life with the Dursleys. And then, hello, welcome to our creative writing workshop. We're talking about plots. And hi. And then, so Act 1 is the exposition where Harry's miserable life with the Dursley. Act 2 is the rising action where he learns he's a wizard and he goes to Hogwarts, and then he faces challenges there. Then the climax is that confrontation with Quirrell, who's actually got Voldemort on his, stuck on his head. Falling action is when Harry wakes up recovering in the hospital wing, and the resolution is when the Gryffindors actually win the House Cup. So we have it here. We have reward upon reward as part of the two last acts that are set in there. There's many examples. We've covered these before. Now, the W plot is also really familiar. We find this all over the place, and it's in modern times. It became it's just classic, where you literally start the action in the middle. Don't wait till we spending a lot of time with the ordinary life. Blow things up in the first paragraph. Make things happen immediately in Act 1, and then you go down to a turning point, and then up and down and up and down in the shape of a W. So James Scott Bell took the W and the 3 and 5 acts, and he put them together and did a demonstration of his own version of this. And then we also can go back in 1983. Fitchian also he took the 3 act and he made it a variation of it, where you have crisis and rising action that keeps stepping up, and then the waterfall effect of the falling action. So many different variations for your story that you can choose. Okay, all of them have the same basic ingredients. You have the exposition, which is that beginning framework. It sets the tone. The rising action is when all those complications and the conflicts start to develop. That's when it starts to get interesting, but it really starts getting interesting when it hits that climax point, and that's a turning point where everything changed and the pressure is there. Then we have the falling action and the resolution and the denouement. So let's break these down so we understand how these work, how this engine works to move your story forward. Okay. All right, let's dive into this. We begin by looking at the acts. Act 1 is the setup, Act 2 is the confrontation, Act 3 is the resolution. Now let's dive deeper. We have a crime. That's an inciting incident. We have the investigation of the crime. That's when the action is rising. This is right out of every detective story, every police novel, every television show, NCIS, CSI, FBI, I don't care, whatever one they are, Mrs. Marple's mystery, Agatha Christie, all follow these basic things. You have the revelation, which is part of the climax, and then the resolution. So let's apply, that's our plot points. Then we make scenes in each one. There are scenes that are within each of these plot points. The dead body is discovered, okay? That's a crime revealed. Our scenes are, you walk into the house, that's the normal world. You enter a room and find a body. Not normal. Not normal, right? Not unless you happen to have a dead body in every house that you own. I don't know. And then there's a response. Okay, the response is call the police, hide the body. What are you going to do? Call a friend? What kind of friend do you have? A friend that will bury the body with you. That's what best kind of friends you need. So there's actions and responses that you have, and there's consequences of the actions that follow. But that's that first opening, getting right into that first Act 1, so to speak. And these are the scenes that make up these plot points. Then you have the investigation, which is the problem solving, and that is, okay, are the police involved? You have detectives involved. Who's trying to solve this? You have the community, the allies going, oh, he did it, she did it, I don't know, the witnesses and all the other people that are part of the story are going to be featured in here in different scenes that make up this plot point. And constantly asking why did this happen? Why did it happen to this person? All the whys that are in there, and collecting evidence. Then we have we know who did it, the revelation. But within that are scenes of false clues, false blame, more evidence is found, and eventually identifying the guilty. So we have many scenes to support that plot point. Then we have the capture, the resolution, mystery is solved, but there are charges that need to be filed. There are consequences of what has happened, why this person did it, but trying to understand the whys. Lives are changed. And you go from that driving force of who did it and why did they do it and what happened to, okay, now what? How do we get back to any form of normal? Do we ever get back to normal? And what are the lessons learned? Does this make sense? These are the scenes, potential scenes within a murder plot, so to speak, basic acts. Make sense? Ian says yes. So does Steph. So when you're writing these things, you can actually go, okay, here's my plot points. Here are the scenes that support each plot point as we continue to run our story through our engine, which is part of the framework. We've used this before. This is when you take the acts and you take the scenes and you add them together, they become the modern term for what we call story beats, or just beats. By Blake Snyder came up with this, and did really well on these. I really recommend Blake Snyder's book series. So you have the opening image is a beat. What is the first thing you see? And the opening image must reflect what the final image is. Very important. In Project Hail Mary, it is, I don't want to spoil it for anybody who hasn't seen it yet, go see it, but we have the reflection of what starts, the starting scene and the ending scene mirror almost identically, and that's really important. It's true of many, many stories. It's a common feature when you're looking at the beats, which are the micro scenes, the emotional micro scenes. In Lion King, we have Pride Rock. In the final image, we have Simba as king on Pride Rock, mirroring those scenes. And then we have the theme that is stated through the love and responsibility, and all things go through. We have the Mufasa's death, which is the catalyst that moves the story forward. We have the Hanakuna Matata song and whatnot that leads us into Act 2, and where Naik is confronted. We have the ghost as we get to the midpoint and so on. So these are all of these are story beats. Okay, so let's look at what beats are. The small moments, the turning points that move a story forward. They're often actions, reactions, revelations, discoveries, secrets revealed, etc. They're emotional shifts, and they offer a change in the direction of the story. That's what a beat is. So it's the micro elements of each of the scenes and the act. So we're drilling through. Save the Cat is Blake's, I just said his name. Anyway, it is Blake's book, Snyder, and Blake Snyder. And you can see there's an opening image. The theme is stated. You have a catalyst. It breaks in Act 2, midpoint, all is lost. Breaking Act 3, final image. So it's taking the 3-act play, kind of making it a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 scene, 8 acts, kind of dividing that up further. Now, what's really important is understanding how these work. And we've covered this before, but I just am doing a reminder and then another example. You have that opening image and the final image. Remember, they're kitty corner across from each other. They have to match. In Act 1, you have these different steps. In Act 2, you have the B stories introduced, and you have all kinds of fun and games and crazy and confusion. Everything else gets put in till Act 2 ends with the dark night of the soul, where the protagonist thinks that all is lost. The antagonist is won. There's no hope, no future. And then Act 3 is where we start the resolution that happens through there. So each of these are the key beats in the story. And again, here is Hunger Games, same thing. Each one of these drives the story forward. The opening image we have in Hunger Games, Katniss understands the world is about survival and it's about relationships, and you cannot survive without relationships, and those relationships will often kill you. That is brought into Hunger Games right away. You know where you are, you know the history, you understand it really quickly. The theme is presented that to survive, you can't escape, you have to win. There's no other choice. You cannot succeed by backing down or anything. You have to win in order to survive. And then we have the setup, where Katniss finds a companion. She's prepared to win. The catalyst is the sister and friend have been chosen, not her. She has to step in and save them because she knows they're not ready and she's ready. And then we have the debate, which is the doubt, not going to go. We always have that. The break into is the makeover that happens to turn her into the great warrior, and so on. As the love triangle, the B story is introduced, we get through all the training and learning, and then it heads all in, on and on and on and on. Make sense? Each of these things push the story forward. For every action is an opposite, an equal reaction. There has to be an escalation step by step. Now, there's so many things to think about in all of this. Next week, we're going to be talking more about what drives the engine, the tension, and the stakes. We're going to be talking about that through the whole rest of the session. There is really a lot to think about. And it can be overwhelming. But I want you to remember that when you are writing, you're writing the draft first, and none of this matters. Once you have the draft down, you have your basics of your story down, that is when you need to go back and initiate craft. You have to melt your story into a form. You have to rearrange things, tighten things up, and you have to make that engine, the story engine, drive harder. Really escalate the tension. Make sure the stakes increase and that pressure is added on your characters and on your plot, because that's where readers fall in love with the characters or love to hate them, both. But they keep reading, they keep turning the pages because you're turning those screws on the story and on increasing that tension. So here is break down what we're going to cover a lot next week with more greater detail. Just giving you the basics here, because this is the fuel that drives the story engine. We built the engine, we're going to drive it forward. We need tension and we need stakes. Tension is what the reader feels. With stakes, it's what the character stands to lose or gain. So this is a picture of Julie Garland as our favorite Dorothy and Wizard of Oz. When you see this picture and you think about the movie and the story, what do you, as a reader, as a viewer, what do you feel in the scene? You remember the scene? What do you feel? What's she doing? How about a reminder? Do you know what she's doing? Ian, what's she doing in this picture? Do you know?
Well, she's thinking about what she has to do going forward, I guess.
Yep. Yeah, she's singing Somewhere Over the Rainbow. So this is early opening scenes. Yeah, she's thinking about what she's going to do and stuff. Steph?
Stating what she wishes could happen and can't figure out how to get there.
And what does it make the reader feel, or the audience?
Sympathy, definitely.
And?
Concern that she won't find her way.
Okay. So we feel her desires, we feel her hopes, and we want them for her, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What does the character stand to gain or lose in that moment?
Depends on what she decides, but in the first place, it's the safety of her dog.
Mm-hmm. And?
What's at stake if she runs away from home?
Okay. Anything else?
She wonders about the friendship she's gonna meet later.
No, she doesn't know about the relationships yet. But what she says in the song is somewhere over the rainbow, skies are blue, and dreams that you dare to dream really do come true. What does that mean? Somewhere over the rainbow, skies are blue, and the dreams that you dare to dream really do come true.
Her longing to be in that place.
Right, and the fear that her dreams are not going to come true.
Ah.
She says, someday I'll wish upon a star and wake up where the clouds are far behind me, where troubles melt like lemon drops away above the chimney tops. That's where you'll find me. So she is already setting us up for a land of lemon drops and sunshine and rainbows. But she is wishing her life was different. Where troubles melt, where the clouds of depression and anger and sorrow and suffering are behind her. Don't you wish you had that today? I think that's part of why this song has become such a classic, right?
Yep.
Oh, of course.
Yeah, we all want that. So we feel her hope. We feel her despair. We feel that it's the same thing we all want. We connect with her as a character because she is feeling what we've all felt. That's the tension. And the stakes, she can win it or she can lose it all. It's a roll of the dice, but she wants these things, and we know in that immediate moment her odds of getting that fairy tale experience, slim and none. So when she wakes up in Munchkin Land, we're like, oh, what? Maybe she will. Maybe this is that land where troubles melt like lemon drops. Maybe that's the land of the beauty and perfection that she's dreamed of. And we find out that there are porcupines and gum on the yellow brick road and all the other things that she stumbles into. It isn't that the world she dreams of has more spikes and dangers in it than the world that she was living in. But it's about perspective, and she needs to change. Her evolution is to change that perspective as she goes through. So that's part of that tension and the stakes. That's what she has to win or lose. So here's how you apply it. Whenever a character has a win, big or small, complicated. Make it complicated. Seriously. Give the character success and then immediately complicate it, because the reader cannot relax too long, because if they relax too long, they're going to get bored. So you want to immediately make life complicated. And we've talked about that. There's lots of ways to make it complicated. I'll give you a great one. My husband's for the first time in ages, has taken the day off to go spend a day with one of his best friends who has a very serious disease, serious illness. And they finally coordinated their schedules, so they went off to the beach. They're both happy. They're both excited, spend some time visiting, catching up, enjoying life while they can before things get too complicated with health and whatnot, to have a peaceful day. And what happens? The tire on their car blows. Not only does it blow, but they don't have a jack. It's a fairly new car, and the jack was taken out. Okay, that's how you complicate things, all right? We're on our way to the beach, and the tire blows, and there's no jack. You gotta increase those odds. It was like, oh my gosh, that's exactly what I'm gonna be talking about today. And there you go. I have a real life example right there. After they fail, after your character has a major fail, increase the pressure, make it worse, make the consequence work, give them a really narrower deadline. They screwed it up, and now that clock has jumped. You see, this is typical television shows and movies. They have 15 minutes to solve this, and whatever they try to do, it doesn't work, and now they have 1 minute because they messed up with the timer. The clock thing is a typical thing. Make a worse consequence and increase that pressure after a failure. It makes things more exciting. When the character gets too close, emotionally gets too close to somebody, too close to the goal, whatever it is, when it feels like they finally have an ally, they finally are close to the goal, it's within reach, they can touch it, blow it up. Raise emotional stakes. and you'll see this on TV in almost every popular show over and over again. They finally get the bad guy grabs a handy victim and puts a gun to their head, said, if you don't let me go or do whatever I want you to do, I'll shoot this person. That's raising the, because now the police person or detective or FBI agent, I don't care, fill in the blank, has to choose between the innocent victim getting the bad guy and continuing to live so they can film the next show. But they've got to, you've got to increase that emotional stake, make the risks higher as soon as the character gets close to whatever the success is. And then we've talked about this before, make the character choose, force a decision. There's usually a trade-off between two goals they want, two important things that they need and want, because when you create a choice under pressure, you get drama. Same thing, what do you choose? Do you choose to risk the life of the innocent victim who's being held hostage, or do you shoot the bad guy and then never learn the truth as to why the bad guy was a bad person? What do you do to resolve this when both choices are bad and they can't choose? That increases the pressure. So those are very common things. So we're going to be talking about this more next week. So I want to talk about really quickly what are some of the format structures. So again, add tension by making the next step harder. Add stakes by making the outcome matter more. All right. Now, how do we do this? How do we break this down as we're writing? Going back to, you've seen these before. Spell out your plot. Even after you've written it, go in and take a look. Where do all the key things happen? Do you need to move some things around? How are you going to pull this all together? You can do it on a piece of paper. You can do it all over, I don't care. Index cards, sticky notes. I've done every method you can imagine. One of the things that I love is using Scrivener. And Scrivener helps me do it and save some paper in the process. I still do it on paper too. But Scrivener has templates by Jamie Gold and some others that break down the story type and the story structure. You get to choose. So you can have Act 1, Act 2, Act 3, or Act 1 through 5. You can have the murder mystery formats that actually have the pinch points and the different things that are set up for the murder, and the reveals and all the elements of a murder mystery, romance, etc. There's basic structures in here. And so here's an example of where you have the opening image and the introduction, and then you put your story elements in that section. You have the inciting incidents, you put the elements of your story there. You have to the end of the beginning, which is what he's calling this particular section 2, which is the beginning act. And then the pinch point number 1 is the pinch point that leads to the end of Act 1, gets us in Act 2, and then Act 2 goes to the midpoint. So you can actually rearrange all the chapters and scenes in your story right there within, and then read through it following those structures. So Scrivener is brilliant for that. So either way, you want to try to map, after you've written the story, map it out and see how can you add a little more tension here, a little more pressure here, or add the consequences, tighten those bolts, and we'll be talking about those next week. Lessons learned, thoughts, comments, ideas?
How is it possible, if one has something a little bit more complicated in terms of plot, where you've got maybe 2 or 3, or maybe just 2 subplots that could be considered flashbacks, or even flash forwards if you're in the right, depending on where you are in the story. When you're combining those two like a layer cake, is there any help for that in Scrivener or anything like that in terms of a game plan?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So again, you can structure these. These are literally, what's up on the screen here are just literally, these are an outline form here, here, and here. And you can have plot 1, plot 2, plot 3, and then you just follow along, because the structure doesn't change. You want to make sure that when you introduce plot 2, that it has the inciting incident, that it has the rising action, it has its own, climax, it has its own resolution. And so you play with a pattern in the story. And so each plot line has its own arc to it, and you can just feed those right in. And there's a million ways to do this in Scrivener that makes it so easy. But some people pull out Excel and start blocking out letters and moving things around, and or index cards. There's so many different ways of doing this. I've done colored sticky notes for each of the, pink for this storyline and orange for that storyline and blue for that storyline, and move them around however you want to do. But that ability to actually create an order and then put different elements of your story in there so that you have a structure. And then you can, in Scrivener, you can look at it, read it through and go, does this connect here? Does this connect there? Nope, move it around, move it around, move it here, move it there, really easily. So hard to do in Word and all the other word processing programs. It's a nightmare to do that. You end up working with table of contents or something. It's just awful. But in Scrivener, you have the binder over here where you can just literally just order it however you want to. This is just a zoom into the binder. Does that help?
Yes. I will try that.
Yeah, I'm working right now. For years, I've been working with the story that has 12 main characters. It's actually 14 main characters in it, and a lot of sub characters, but 14 main characters, and 7 plots interacting within it to make, some of them are big plots, some are little plots, and some come in and then disappear out, and it's really hard. Weaving storylines is really hard, but you've got to study it. Maeve Binchy is one of my absolute favorites, where she takes all these diverse characters and she weaves them in so they're all interconnected, and there needs to be commonality between them. And that's, the reader needs to understand why these people exist in your story, so you're not just throwing people in left and right because you can. That's cheap shot stuff where you just go, oh, I need a new character, boom, throw them in. It just doesn't work. Great question. Thank you. Any others? Ian, does this help you with your story?
Yes, I think it would help more if we did a live example of building up later, like throwing out the basic thing and then working from there.
Exactly. And you have a great core story, but you need to increase the tension as it moves through the story. And that's really important, is you're taking the reader on a journey, and they need to go up the roller coaster and down the roller coaster.
Can I put all my story on Discord because it's now finished, and I had some people wanting to read it, but I don't know if I can put everything on it.
If you put it in as a PDF and you can upload it, that's up to you. That's your choice in the Share Your Story channel. We love having people share their stories. It is not, be aware that it is not the same as publishing. It is sharing, and we're really clear, so you're not losing any rights by doing this. And you're more than welcome to. Just know that we don't have many people that are going to give you, they're going to give you cheerleading support. They're not going to go dive in and fix things. That you need to get that done elsewhere. But I really recommend, before you do, that you really, really take your story apart, take a look at all these different parts, identify what plot type. It's not just science fiction. That's not a plot type, that's a genre. Identify the plot type. Is it a comedy? Is it a tragedy? Is it a hero's journey? Is it what it is a quest? And then really look at the structure. Is it W? Is it the Freytag's pyramid, you know, what's the shape? How are you taking us through the journey? Because we'll be able to tell, and make sure that you're tightening those screws down on your characters, that everything that they do has a consequence. And they, again, I'm going to just, this is just such really solid advice, that after they win, you got to complicate things from them. After they fail, you got to increase the pressure. You need to raise those emotional stakes all the time so that they're constantly threatened. And like I said, this is every television show. Every TV show has these things when you're dealing with, you know, espionage or crime, or, you know, there's a million of them right now on TV. And really force a trade-off. Choose between two important things.
That's a good idea. I'll upload it on Discord and we can go through what we're learning right now and take it to the test.
Yeah, I would take it through the test before you upload it to Discord. But yeah, I think it's really good. And if you want to see a script that has every single one of these things, textbook. I mean, there's so many of them, but absolute textbook. The series Homeland is, boy, this is like classic. Every win comes with a massive complication. Every failure, there is something that increases the pressure. Every time the person gets close to succeeding, the rug, it's not the rug, the whole foundation is pulled out of the main characters, pulled away, and they are constantly, in every other scene, forced to choose between two, sometimes three important things. And part of the drama is the fact that the characters are forced to choose against impossible odds every single time. So that's a great one. But there's so many of them. Star Wars, you'll find this all over the place. You know, as soon as something happens, boom, there's bad things happen. So dig through and see what you can do to fix this before you hand it over for us to look at. All right, any other comments or questions? Okay, I appreciate you all being here. So we've been talking about, in our new plot lab thing, we've been talking about the story engines, the structure, really diving in, looking at some of the conflict, and how do you place the elements that really churn that engine. And then next week, we're going to be diving in to the, oops, wrong slide. We're going to dive into really looking at those pressure points, and how the conflict, people live for conflict, man. That sounds terrible, but we like to see our characters get chewed up and spit out. We just love that. And we're going to be looking at those stakes and the consequences and the emotional urgency. How do you really push that forward in the story? And then before, we're going to sum it up and take you from scene to story, really helping you understand how to structure that tension in, so it keeps intensifying and intensifying until we go, oh, they figured it out. Okay, we can relax now. Get on, return semi-normal. Yep. All right. Now, coming up, stuff that is coming up as a reminder. We have the reading event in June. We have the end of June. August, we're going to have Tang Whistle or The Break, and September prep, and October prep for VRYMO. October's Scary Storytelling, November possibly VRYMO, and in December is Holiday Storytelling. So get ready for all of these things. And next month, get ready for Short Story Boot Camp. Oh, we're going to have so much fun with that. All right. Thank you, everyone, and thank you to our filmer, Rich, who stepped in as Lance is traveling right now, and Stands with Trees is our moderator and our stage manager for the day. So thank you, Rich, for filming, and you can find all of the videos and things for the creative writing and all of our Educators in VR events here in Engage XR and the other platforms on our Educators in VR Discord. My name is Laurel, and I am the Director of Educators in VR and the founder of the Creative Writing Workshop. So thanks, everyone.